I'd like to go to you and introduce yourself if you can.
Nicole Lazar, I'm a communications attorney. And actually, you're bringing up things that you're reflecting some of my frustrations with the internet and the technology, in that it enables greater democratization, but in some ways it doesn't facilitate democracy, because you have fragmentation, you have splicing of ideas, and you can always find something to reinforce your viewpoint and your understanding, which I think is great, and it's very empowering, especially when it comes to negative messages that we receive. But I think it needs to get one step further and facilitate cross-cultural exchanges and particularly ideological exchanges. So my question to you is, what needs to be done to achieve that? Is it partnering, as Donna mentioned? Is it financing? Is it that we still need to push to get our voices on other media, Slate.com, or larger organizations that have not been giving us the voices that still need to happen? Or is the aggregation eventually going to lead to that sort of, hopefully, cross-cultural exposure that I think needs to happen before we're actually effective with getting our agendas across?
Well, one of the things I've taken away from what you've said is how valuable is it to have other outlets like broadcast in conjunction with what's online. That's just something that comes to mind as I think about what you said. I don't know who'd like to respond to this, though.
I don't know. I tend to see the internet as the great democracy, really. Whatever gets voted up, whatever has the most comments, regardless of whether or not I like it, that's what the people say is important. And so I can either address that, or I can start trying to teach away from that. And so I think, when it comes to diversity and cross-culturalism, those aren't necessarily, that isn't necessarily democracy. But they are tenets of a great society. So I think that becomes important upon us to engage in those conversations. The reason there's a Blogging While Brown conference is because there were no black people at the other conferences. And they did not invite us. They did not probably want us there. And so, well, okay. We can disagree or agree or disagree there. But the point is that Gina started it. And so I think that's what happens in democracy, is when there is a need, and when there is a need for education, when there is a need for someone to step in, then, again, we keep talking about, well, how do we do this and how do we do that? At the end of the day, we have to do it. And if we don't do it, if Rod doesn't do it, if Paul doesn't do it, if I don't do it, it's not going to get done.
Yeah. And let me just quickly give out, this is not that much shorter, but it may stick in your mind, the tiny URL that I developed, which is tinyurl.com, tinyurl.com/blackonline. You can, tinyurl.com/blackonline. And then you can get to the same site, mobilizingthemasses.blogspot.com. That may stick in your mind more, it may not. It's not the shortest one, it might be catchy. We have to move on. I'm going to go to one last question and then a round of responses from our panel.
Okay. Yes, my name is Reverend Elijah Hill. I'm the president of the National African American Museum of Religions Online. And basically, our organization is just to advocate Black church history and the Smithsonian's project that's coming up on the Washington Mall. One of the things that we decided to do, and I know the other young lady was speaking about, dialoguing, but yet at the same time, having to look at the steps of getting things done politically, and that's basically what we're looking at with what I'm talking about now. So what I did is formulated a coalition of ministers across the board nationally. One of the things we're going to be doing under that umbrella is doing like a 25 think tank of different social issues in order to create a community and a village, more than just what we do, nationally when we come to annual meetings and things like that. I think social media, what you all are dialoguing about, is the key to creating the village on a more consistent basis, for our community. And so what types of things out of my 25 issue think tank, what other things would you all suggest that I could do from a media direction as a minister to share things with my board of how we could utilize, mass media? I'm sorry I came in a little late, so that's why.
Well, let me ask you this, because every day I have 20 emails from somebody wanting me to push their agenda or their idea. And so my question is, what are social media? Donna spoke about it earlier. There is a give and take. So what is the benefit to bloggers or people who tweet to tweeting about what you're talking about, other than they think it's a great idea? How can bloggers maybe participate in that? Will they have a seat at the table in the planning process? Mm-hmm. And I think if you engage people who are already in the space, so that they can claim ownership of it, I think that may help you, because then they could be a resource.
Can I answer that for you?
Oh, well,
just very briefly, because we do have to move to the next panel shortly.
It was rhetorical.
I would just like to say now,
really
I know
briefly.
it was, but briefly, well, that's part of why I came here too, is to connect with people. Somebody could chair a social mass media aspect and then bring in other players to dialogue nationally to see how to make that effective. That's how we would do it.
Two seconds.
Please,
just really quickly as well, like when you talk about building a community and that give and take, you'll hear about it more in the next panel segment, but there are different types of social media, different purpose, right? And so one thing you might want to consider exploring is, okay, so how do we create our own social network? What does that mean? Once we've accumulated, our rosters, all churches have their list of parishioners, so put them all online. Put them all together so they can dialogue, whether you're in Alabama, Atlanta, Florida, wherever you are, put them together. And we do have a panelist on the next segment who can talk to you more about that.
Oh, and I do have a vision to raise $40 million of a black economic stimulus package. Private
Well,
funds.
save me a
No
chunk.
government.
Save me, we'll talk afterwards. Save me a little piece of the pie. All right, guys, we have to wrap up. And I think that what we've heard from folks here is that there are a lot of people searching and a lot of people creating. And so I just want one concrete thought from you. To return to a comment that was made earlier, if I feel like a lot of parts of this conversation are things that I need more information on, whether it's I just don't understand it or I want more, I certainly will make a commitment to go to mobilizingthemasses.blogspot.com and put some things up on the site that people can follow. I think that a lot of us will go there. We all have Twitter feeds. If you go to the website, through the direct link or the tiny URL, we'll put things up. But just give us a takeaway, and I'm just going to go again, starting with Carmen.
I'm not even going to get to the technical. I just want to tell you that your voice is worthy. And you may not be, I don't have the gift for activism that Gina does, but I bring people to the funnel. I'm a bridge builder. I specialize in cross-cultural conversations, actually, but I'm a bridge builder. And I build consensus and help them move her way. So all I'm saying is everybody has a part to play.
And I just say find your niche, make sure you're passionate about what you're doing. I think we've said it a couple of times on the panel now, but if you're really passionate about your particular area of content, and people feel that, people can sense that. Engage other people into your conversation, and they'll engage you, and you'll continue to grow your audience, and ultimately be able to hopefully monetize that business.
Start using the technology, whether you have a specific purpose in mind, whether you want to talk about what you have for breakfast, whatever it is, start using the technology and encourage the people around you to do the same, because then you'll develop a comfort level with this so that you can engage freely in discourse about those issues that really do mean a lot to you.
If you're lost, you don't have to be. If you're confused, you don't have to be. If you didn't know before today you know. You have a resource. You have a group of people who are committed to their community, and they're committed to making sure you get it. And they will share. That's one of the great things about when we all come together in a group. I always learn something new. So this is yours too. Claim it. And if you need a tour guide, that's what we're here for.
I love it.
I'll say push your content. Make sure that people know what you're doing. Don't expect people are just going to find you. You've got to push it, even if it takes 10 times to get one of us to post something, or 20. We still might get that. And network, it is important to network, because I met Carmen 2 years ago at Blogging While Brown, and she tweeted about the pool situation in Philadelphia. I was like the first person in Dallas that knew about it because of that network. And I might not know you if you keep asking me to attend your party because you want me to increase your attendance. But if you say, look, my daughter is cute on my Facebook page, I'll know that. So network.
I love it. And guys, please stick around. We're going to have an entrepreneurship panel next, and I personally am looking for some tips. But right now I want to thank all of our fabulous speakers. We were speaking with Sean Williams, editor of DallasSouthNews.org, the always provocative Gina McCauley, founder of Blogging While Brown, What About Our Daughters, Michelle Obama Watch, also with Crystal High, founding co-chair Innovation Generation Broadband Policy Summit, and Donna Bird, publisher of The Root at WashingtonPost.com. Finally, Carmen Dixon Rosenzweig, founder All About Race, editor AOL Black Voices. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
And may I invite my next victims up? Thank you. And Twitter, by the way, a lot of us have been talking about Twitter, which is a way that you can push information, and it just raised $100 million in new funding. And it has no model. It has no profit model. But people are willing to give them $100 million because they know that Twitter is influential, and Twitter is a technology that allows you across different media platforms to push out your voice. So I think a lot of times we think that, we have to be in a position where what we do is able to make money immediately. But there is money in building an audience. They don't know what they're going to do with this audience yet, but when you have, people across the globe doing this, then you have a very interesting situation. So I'm going to ask my former panelists to take their seats. Come on, guys. I love this. Gosh, it's like being bossy, which is my favorite thing ever to do. All right. Yes, being bossy, my favorite thing ever. You can just ask my sister. This panel is we're going to move in a different direction here, which is talking about how you build not only an audience, but how you build an enterprise. And we're calling this e-achievement, online opportunities for entrepreneurship. And, being Black is always living in the best of times and the worst of times. You always have opportunities to create the next model, and you always have, unfortunately, you were looking for water. I was like, there's only 4 microphones. You always have opportunities to sort of leap ahead and surge and, just think of the rise of hip hop and all the enterprise that's created. But at the same time, you're constantly facing barriers of respect, accountability, challenges of marketing. And so we have a group of folks here. All right, guys, previous panel. I love this. I'm going to go through, and instead of even, doing the introductions that I did last time, I want each of you to introduce yourself by your name, by the title that you'd most like to be, identified with, and we have wonderful folks here, some of whom I know, some of whom I don't. But then also just throw out a question that you want to reflect on, and we'll circle back to that in our initial conversation. I'm going to try to make this panel very much interactive among all of you. So why don't you go ahead and start, Eric?
I am Eric Easter. I am the Vice President of Digital and Entertainment at Johnson Publishing, Ebony and Jet, and things to come. One of the things I focus on is global expansion. Of folks using the tools at hand to understand other cultures and to reach across other cultures and to seek opportunities that may have been lost to us now, but that 30 years ago, if you had known what you know now, you might be able to do in Brazil or in Africa or in other places because people are in a different culture. And so the opportunities are wide open. So the more we focus on global stuff,
So what question do you want us to think about?
I want us to think about 2 things. One is the fact that just because we're talking about new media does not negate the fact that people are still making a lot of money from old media. And we should not forget that no new medium that has come along, no new form of communication has ever absolutely replaced any old form. So whether it's the written word or the spoken word or print or books or whatever, all those things exist. And while there are fewer people making money at those, they are making money in different ways. There are still ways to make money, and there are still a million opportunities for African Americans in particular of things that don't exist for us in those spaces. And so even though all this new stuff is coming on, don't cut yourself out of what already exists and what we have jumped over for this new media. So that's well,
James, give us a little bit about what you're up to and what you want us to think about.
That's perfect. James Andrews, managing partner of a firm called Everywhere. We are social media communications specialists. I've been in the space a very long time. So I guess my question would be a continuation of what Eric had to say, which is, what does the world of content look like when you combine both new media and old media together? And I urge you to look at the manufacturers, companies like Vizio that make your HD TVs in your home. They are now embedding Twitter feeds in the TV and Facebook Connect in the TV. So as the next Robert Townsend, or the next Spike Lee, or the next producer of content or producer of news, the next CNN, what does that look like when you combine both the powerful force of now media, of social media, and a handset or a device, and then interject old media? I think the world of content, news, and information is going to change. It's changing in front of our face. And we happen to work with CNN. It's one of our clients. So it's fascinating to me to look at the space of information, news, content, entertainment, and to figure out that tapestry and where we fit. And I think there's huge, huge implications and opportunities for us as African Americans to play a role.
All right, Navarro.
Sure. How's everybody doing? It's like 4 o'clock after you've been sitting here for like hours of presentations. I'm gonna wake you up a little bit.
Yeah, we need aerosolized caffeine or something.
We might have somebody bring some Joe or a Red Bull in here in a minute. So, Navarro Wright, I am the president of Maximum Leverage Solutions, which is an internet consulting and social media firm. Prior to that, I was the founder of GlobalGrind.com, a hip-hop content social media site I founded with Russell Simmons. And prior to that, I was the chief technology officer at BET and the creator of BET.com. I guess, when you think about the question I want people to think about, for me and just in general for the panel, is why are more African Americans and minorities in general not taking advantage of the internet phenomenon from an entrepreneurial standpoint, and what should they be afraid of?
I like that. What should we be afraid of as Black entrepreneurs? Fear itself? All right, I'm going to go to you, Gary. What are you up to? Tell us about your enterprises and also your fears, your deepest fears. I feel like an analyst now. I've gone from the school teacher to the analyst.
Well, piggybacking off of Navarro, there's really nothing to fear, and I think that there is an enormous opportunity for African Americans to make a lot of money in social media. And so I'm the CEO of Decado, which is a company that makes social media platforms for business. That's all we do. We enable companies to create their own social media platforms and to make money. So our focus is really to answer the question, how do you make money through social media? And we've been fairly successful in providing that opportunity for companies to make money. So one way is our platform unites brands so they can extend their brand messaging, and we're adept in a number of categories: business to business, healthcare, faith-based, housing, and mortgage finance. And so those are our sweet spots.
Sounds great. Angela?
I'm Angela Benton from Black Web 2.0. It's the flagship site of a company I've started about 2 years ago called Black Web Media. Black Web 2.0 focuses on African Americans in technology. We cover mainstream technology news, but we also cover it from an African American's perspective. We may also cover the African American internet community. We feature executives at many of these media companies and also in new media and entrepreneurs. I guess I will have to echo what Navarro said about the lack of entrepreneurs who choose to take the technology path. and it's not just from a business perspective. I really feel like from a development perspective, people who are, application developers, software developers, can easily make that move, but for some reason, we don't seem to, I guess, make that connection that that's a real business opportunity there.
When I think about entrepreneurship, I think about failure. A friend of mine today, as we're here, is running a very cool salon in New York called Fail, which is bringing together digital entrepreneurs, telling their war stories and talking about the stripes that they have taken. James, I'm going to put you on the spot because we lived.
That's why I'm getting the water.
Yeah, exactly. We lived through the dot-bomb era together. What have you learned from some of the more the painful moments of the past, and how does fear figure into things? I mean, do you fear continuing to be an entrepreneur and an innovator, or do you embrace it, or both?
Good question. Well, I think that fear for me, is what I think I turned fear into this other potion, that activates faith for me. So I think, having lived through the 90s in the dot-com experience that we were able to participate in, one called Urban Box Office, where we raised $40 million in 3 rounds of funding and had, lots of people in an office. I really learned from that situation. I was talking to Gary, who I knew back in those days and haven't seen Gary since those days. And he said, tell me what you're doing now. And I talked about our business. And as I was talking to him, in many ways, what I'm doing now is a continuation of what we were doing at UBO and what George Jackson dreamed up in a company. So I think that the 90s and those dot-com days were an important evangelistic moment for me. That was when I first interfaced with brands and had to sell brands on concepts that they had no idea what I was talking about. It was when I had to leverage my entertainment background and my relationships within the entertainment business and combine that with technology and create a rationale behind new media. And it was, we were way ahead of our curve. So many of us were way ahead of our curve. And when you live on the vanguard, it's a tough position to be in sometimes because you're usually speaking hieroglyphics and no one knows what you're talking about. But it made me a better counselor. I think it made me a better evangelist today. A big part of my company is the ability to explain technology in the ROI and to really help our clients understand the why of why they'd want to embrace technology.
Well, let's drill down just a little bit.
Sure.
Because, a lot of people are not going to be familiar with all the things that you've done. Give me an example of something that you did at Urban Box Office and something that you do now and what you learned from that experience, which I'm sure was the best and worst of times, and how you apply it to what you do today. And be very specific.
So at Urban Box Office, we were a collection of many, many different sites. For those in the audience who some of you might have been in 8th grade when we did this, but some of you may have heard of it. But we raised a lot of money. We were, one of the leaders in the African American space, urban space, as it was defined then, in the technology space. And we raised $40 million, and there was a man named George Jackson who passed away, who was really his vision. This was our first investor was Nicholas Negroponte, chairman of MIT New Media Lab at the time. I think one of the things I learned, during that time period in terms of building a business, was how to, take culture and something that we took for granted. The idea that many of us at UBO were coming out of the cool, hip, record labels. I was the head of marketing at a company called Echo Unlimited and had gone to UBO from there. It's how do you leverage that? How do you package that up? And leverage that. I was having a conversation with from The Root, Donna Bird from The Root. We were talking about her newest hire, Danielle Smith, who is now, I guess, publisher.
Fabulous.
Fabulous. We love her, right?
Yep.
Well, what makes Danielle, amazing, and I told Donna that many of the other candidates who didn't get the job called me about that position. And I said to her, what makes Danielle really special is that she comes out of hip-hop. And she comes out of a generation of those of us who had to make a dollar from nothing. Me, myself, working at Columbia Records, I didn't have big budgets to break acts like the Fugees. I didn't have, lots of money. So I think that during the dot-com days, we were sort of fooled into these huge, large amounts of money that we had. I hired 50 people. I'd hire people on the spot. We threw big parties. And then I think, you know, in this day and age, you know, we're not blessed with the same budgets. There is money flowing, as we talked about before this panel. There's definitely money. There's venture money. There's money happening. It's coming in many different places. But what I learned is, you know, how to leverage culture, how to maximize our dollar, how to, how to spend wisely and find out where to look for money. I think many times for African Americans, we don't really have a good sense of like where that money's coming from and how to actually play the game, the venture game. One of the things at UBO, it was great, we raised 3 rounds of funding, Chase Capital, a guy named Fred Wilson, who you guys should know now, Flatiron Partners, who writes a wonderful blog called AVC, and he writes about being a VC, a venture capitalist. You know, I learned a lot from my venture capitalists on, you know, the whole game and that whole game of venture capital. So I think today, in this day and age, and many people on this panel probably have a lot more experience raising money, and I know that raising money is important, as I heard the one brother talk about wanting to raise $40 million, and I did work at a company that raised $40 million. You know, it's a new day. It's a new opportunity for us, and I think we have to play the game, get smart about it. And so I would say that's probably one of the biggest things I learned. And today I'm executing that by being a service company, but realizing that I'm not going to be a service company all day. I've got to build a widget. I've got to have a widget. So as much as we do service clients, and we have about 9 or 10 clients that we service now, from Jane Fonda to Georgia Public Broadcasting, I realize that I've got to build a widget.
So you're at Key Influencer on Twitter? And
yeah, JamesAndrews.tv, at the Key Influencer. I mean, I play the game. I live in all the spaces. You
have the most fun Twitter feed.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just trying to keep up.
Okay, but I just Twittered about you.
Uh-oh, I didn't even know. It wasn't even a log rolling in our time moment. Yeah. But thank you. Yeah. I want to go to Gary next, because you created a way for us to interact in this space before we even got here. Just give us, in very plain, specific language, what it was that you did. That
I can show you.
Yeah, well, I hope. Oh, are you setting it up? Look at this. Wow, it's magic. I love it. I didn't even know that we were planning all this. So please, you should come over, Gary, because I'm not qualified to drive that machine.
Nor am
I. But you're doing, customized experiences in social media when you want to be able to bring people together, for a specific purpose. At least that's my experience with what you do. So you can explain more about. Why don't you talk a little bit about it while we get set up?
Well, our focus really is more about building the car, because everyone has a variety of interests, and not only building the platform, but showing you how to make money using that platform. And that's our core competency. So our primary targets are corporations. And so corporations, we make money 3 ways. So for Decado, we enable them to have their platform so they can, and they pay us a monthly fee for it, no different than a cell phone model. You know, everyone has a cell phone. I don't care if you call the Easter Bunny or if you call Santa Claus. I just want you to use the phone. The same thing with Decado. I want you to use the platform. We charge them a monthly fee. If they want video email, we add that feature in. If they want text messaging, we add that feature in. The second way is we have that platform and we help them leverage their own audience base. For example, Eric is with Ebony and Jet. We've all grown up with Ebony, and I had my share of Jet Beauty of the Weeks on my my wall when I was growing up. But the idea is to take that brand, because they own that brand. So as counter programming to Facebook, which is a phenomenal platform, but Ebony spent the money, the sweat equity to build their brand. So why would they want to dilute it on Facebook? And so he owns that brand, or at least Johnson Publication owns that brand. So what Decado does is we enable them to use their audience that they've earned over the last 50 years and to aggregate them to a place. And then now we have this dialogue of people who are Jet and Ebony enthusiasts that is powered by our software, no different than a cell phone. So the question is, if you threw your cell phone in the Potomac, what's more important, the cell phone itself or the content on that cell phone? And so we at Decado feel like they're both important, but But Eric built the content on that, so why would he want to put that on Facebook and have it diluted? So simply stated, we look at Decado as a way to control your brand. So it would be like Facebook is to Napster, which, you know, James and Navarro remember 10 years ago was, you know, incredible. They had 50 million people file sharing, you know, information, but they made $0. So Facebook is to Napster, in my mind, as Decado is to iTunes. We came in from day one being profitable because we took a concept, which is social media, packaged it up, and gave it right to corporations whose sole goal is to make more money. And so that is really where we live. And the other part of that is like, for example, I have a client in Indianapolis called Primo, which, you know, you've never heard of, but they provide marketing automation to 93,000 customers. Well, our software is affixed to their product that goes to their 93,000 customers. So in essence, I have 93,000 customers with one client. And so as the panelists earlier had talked about, social media is truly the Wild West. There are no rules. And we, as African Americans, are clearly the most creative people on the planet Earth. And we create popular lexicon, culture, and even Navarro, his site, he's got a niche that he has a stranglehold on, and he owns that category. And so what our goal at Decado is to create 10,000 Facebooks. We all maybe know the story, don't know the story, but this 27-year-old white kid, Mark Zuckerberg, 136th richest person on the planet Earth, but they make no money. And so my thought is, for them, Facebook, they're you know, consumer grade. I thought, what's more important? Me being friends with Angela, which is quite actually important, but or Accenture doing business with Wachovia, and so we're betting on the latter. So.
Well, I'm going to go, because you mentioned Navarro to Navarro. I was able to pull up, the internet apparently is a little spotty. I was able to just pull up your home site. But you mentioned Navarro having a lock on his audience. Navarro, tell us what your...
That's my opinion.
Yeah, that's a good opinion to have. So what space are you working in?
I think if I had a lock on my audience, I'd be in the South Seas somewhere, sitting here on the panel. I'm thinking you were referring to the Global Grind experience. Right. And what we did at Global Grind is we built a social media site because we felt that this audience was underserved in terms of the content and ideas and understanding. And if you heard from the bloggers before, the multitude of sites that are out there that appeal to that demographic. So we used some of the tools that are already out there in the space that this audience didn't know about to build a site for us, by us. That was the concept for Global Grind. I think Global Grind is still a growing site. Stranglehold is a strong term. I think we hope to have a stranglehold one day. But I think, you know, dovetailing off what people have said here to kind of demystify the whole thing about creating internet companies, yes, there's huge opportunity out here, but we're not taking advantage of it. You know, if you think about the landscaping, you know, my college roommate and I used to say we're going to start a laundromat when we graduated, right? We did the whole business plan. We said we'd buy the washer and dryers from Sears. You could get, remember the little electronic door in the laundromat that would close automatically at 11? You know, we had it all there. But even that business would have taken $10,000, $15,000 to start. The beauty of the internet is that you can start a company with no money, with $0. You know, I as part of getting ready for this conference, I did a couple things. I said, you know what, if I wanted to start a business creating an application for the iPhone, what would I need to do? I went to the library, got a free book on application development for the iPhone. I went to apple.com and downloaded the software for free. And I had everything I needed to start that company. And the challenge is that our demographic doesn't know about those opportunities. It doesn't recognize how simple they are. You know, you mentioned Michael Zuckerberg, but the reality is the kid was 19 years old in his college dorm room using free software, and now he's worth more than Puffy, Jay-Z, and Russell put together, right? And he did it in 3 years when they did it in 10 to 15 to 20, you know, even longer in Russell's case. So what we have to start understanding is that there's opportunities out here for us to change the landscape of
of business. You know, Mr. Clyburn talked about earlier about the opportunities being out there and how African Americans lost those opportunities in the last recession. We're going to lose those again if we don't take advantage of this technology landscape. I mean, the beauty of it is, young brother over there gnawing on the seat. I don't want to call him out. He's not even looking. But he could start, you know, that's your son? So he could start a company, you know, right after he finishes gnawing the seat, he could start a company. You know, that's the beauty of it. And what we need to do, right, and he will. I mean, we need to impart that understanding to our audience. You know, my big thing of late has been that we need to change the value proposition in the African American culture, right? It's great to aspire to be the next Jay-Z, the next Michael Jordan, the next Puffy, but we need to aspire the same way to be the first Black Bill Gates, the first Black Michael Dell, and we don't have those aspirations, we don't have those discussions. I mean, it's crazy when, you know, some of the biggest companies we talk about, Facebook, Twitter just got valued at $1 billion.
By some people.
And by some people, but they raised $100 million, and this room is empty. You know, when you think about, you know, everybody's grabbing for dollars, you know, there's a site called TechCrunch that talks about new startups. 10 new companies launched in the last 2 weeks, and they all had venture funding. Angela runs Black Web 2.0. She has a hard time finding companies to cover because we're not in that space. Yep. You know, so we have to really figure out ways to empower ourselves to get educated by it.
Angela, why don't you jump in on that point? And tell us,
Navarro kind of said it all. I mean,
there's always more to say on a panel.
Well, the fact that, you know, the first session, with Robert Townsend was, you know, it was packed in here. And, you know, now we're sitting on a panel about entrepreneurship and really the opportunities that do exist. And, you know, you have the ability to kind of really take your own destiny and build something and become the next, you know, Mark Zuckerberg or Michael Dell. And the room is, you know, literally, people left. So I'm not really sure what it will take for, you know, people to realize the opportunities that are there or realize that it is a cool opportunity there, you know. So it's not just about entertainment, the entertainment value kind of proposition.
I just want to put one thing into perspective because, you know, one of the things that you hear about if you're reading the media, you hear all, you know, New York Times, Washington Post talking about how much money they're not making and there's no money in digital and they're trading, you know, dollars for pennies and those kinds of things. But you need to understand the reason why those folks think that there's no money is because they've been living really high on the hog for a long time. And so their definition of no money is, you know, $100 million, you know, up against $3 billion. And so, you know, the question for you as an entrepreneur is how much money is enough for you? So getting into, you know, a small business that may make $250,000 is not enough to even think about for a company even like mine. I mean, you know, the fact that we may make, you know, a third of what the magazine makes, or what we make in a year is what the magazine makes, you know, in a month, right? And so people go, okay, digital, that's cute, whatever. But for somebody who's an individual, and you're making, you know, maybe $50,000, you know, $3 million is, you can retire on. You know, so you really have to, you know, how much money is enough? How much audience is enough for you? You know, advertisers are really now, because this landscape is open, there's too much noise. I mean, there may be about 50 magazines that reach more than 1 million people. But there are millions of websites that reach that much, right? And so they're trying to find, where do I go? And so you may only reach 10,000 people. If those 10,000 people are absolutely interested in the thing that they're interested in, you are much more valuable to an advertiser than some site that reaches 1 million people, but only 3 of those people on that 1 million person site are interested in that same thing.
I can actually speak to that because I do have a site, and it is a small, it's a niche site. It's about African Americans and technology. And, you know, no, we don't strive. Our goal is not to get to, you know, 1 million visitors. That would be nice. But, you know, in the same breath, we do have trouble finding, you know, partnerships with advertisers directly. I'd love to partner with Microsoft directly. You know, I'd love to partner with Dell or, you know, whomever directly. We don't get those opportunities. We don't. But, you know, other sites that are very similar to ours but cover, you know, on the mainstream, they get those kind of page views. So we have a targeted audience, but we still do think our audience is much more valuable. But I mean, it's all about trying to fight your way in, too. So it's not always as easy as it seems. So we're definitely up here saying you have the tools, you can, you know, control your own destiny, but it's still a fight, just like, you know, any kind of, you know, entrepreneur.
I just want to add one thing.
Okay.
Because I thought that your quote was just profound about the next Black Bill Gates, but I guess I'm like the jaded panelist. I feel like I sat on a panel here with like an Omar Wassau and Darian Dash, like 1998, and we said the same thing, you know. And so I just feel like, to your point about the empty room, like we really need to take entrepreneurship and digital entrepreneurship seriously. And I think your point was spot on. Keep going. I'm sorry.
Well, now you got me all hot and bothered about it. But isn't entrepreneurship almost by nature something that proceeds from a vast number of people who have an idea, to people who research the idea, to people who act on the idea, to people who succeed? I mean, maybe it's good for us that we're. I'm being provocative, deliberately provocative.
No, I think so. I think great point to make. The problem is that in the majority space, there's 20 people with the same idea, and 20 of them try it, and 19 of them fail, but 20 of them are trying. In our space, there's 2 that try, they don't get the support from the other 20, and the odds are that they fail. I mean, let me give you some realistic, kind of set the framework, right, from where I come from. So when I came with the idea of Global Grind, you know, I think I pitched about 60 VCs. I ended up in venture capitalists, people who invest in startup companies. I was blessed enough to get in front of the room at Excel Partners, who's the same company invested in Facebook. They gave us $4 million, right? They had a CEO day about 6 months in after we raised the money. I went in. There was a room like this. It was filled with 350 people. They had the CEO of Google. They had the CEO of Microsoft talk, the CEO of Electronic Arts, who creates Madden and all those video games. 250 people in the room. I was the only black person there who wasn't serving food. Now, not to be rude, I'm not that smart, right? Like, I'm blessed and I'm fortunate, but I'm not that smart, right? It's not an anomaly, right? There's opportunities out there, and there's people out there making money, and we just don't see it, right? We just don't have those realistic conversations. So I get you that yes, we should be happy because there's few people in here, so we can take advantage of those. But the problem is, there's not enough of us out there equating the opportunities. And then secondly, to Angela's point, where she's like, you know, well, I don't expect to get 1 million visitors to my site. Why not, right? The reality is that when those people create those companies, they don't say, well, I'm creating it, and you know, we create lackluster expectations for ourselves, and we're okay with that. You know, I know I'm getting worried.
I'm
obviously passionate about this topic.
I like
so, you know, one of the bloggers here before was talking about, you know, if you buy an Xbox versus a computer, it's still a computer. But the people buying Xbox don't buy it because they think it's a computer. And they're buying it to consume. They're not buying it to create. They talked about cell phones, right? People have iPhones. There was 1 billion iPhone apps created. There's not one created by a black person. 1 billion iPhone apps downloaded in the first year of business. All that commerce. And these are paying apps. Not one black person. So you talk about opportunity there. Computers. I think everybody whether they live in the projects or whether they live in $1 million home, has either an Xbox, Wii, or a PlayStation 3, right? And you ask them why they don't buy a computer. Well, I don't buy a computer because they cost too much money. Computers are in Target for $300, right? And you looked at the last Pew Internet study, you know, or less than 50% of African Americans have adopted the internet, right? And part of their reasons are the cost of the equipment, the cost of those things. But the reality is, right, they're not knowledgeable about what's there. They're not knowledgeable. We talk about how you can use the internet for free cell phone calls, how you can have video calls with people across the country, how you can engage in multiple ways. And there's a whole world out there who's using it, living it, breathing by it.
That's how I talk to my brother in Zimbabwe.
And I don't want to make historic analogies, but there was a time a long time ago where there was a whole world using and doing things that we didn't have and have access to and didn't let us, and then connected to the fact that there's legislature out there now that's trying to limit your activity on the internet and limit what content you get access to, and half of the African Americans don't know about it. You know, and we said before, there's nothing to be afraid of. I think there is something to be afraid of. Because there's a whole room even here at the CBC of people who aren't thinking about these issues, and they're prevalent. You know, Mr. Clyburn talked about how technology is going to be involved in healthcare, how it's going to be involved in education. And if we don't have an active part in that, we're going to get left out.
Let me go to what I hope will be a success story. Angela, give me a success story of a company that you covered, you know, coming off of that wonderful, wonderful exposition from Navarro. Who has made it happen that you personally got a chance to talk to or you looked into?
There are several people, but I mean, Navarro's sitting right here, but I guess I'll tell you the story about Navarro. My partner, Marcus Robinson, who's based in Florida. I'm based in Charlotte, but I'll never forget the very first time, we covered Global Grind. We knew about it, and we knew about Navarro, but the fact that they actually raised money from Excel Partners, like the fact that he went in there and was able to do that in Silicon Valley, like, to me, that was a success story. I had never heard of anything like that at all. So, I mean, I guess that really kind of struck a chord with us, because that's a lot of that's what we're about. That's what we want to cover. We want to cover more stuff like that, on a daily basis. There haven't been any, huge acquisitions. So sites like Mashable and TechCrunch, which cover technology news, they get the opportunity to cover, companies really through the full life cycle, all the way through acquisition. And we haven't had the opportunity to cover that. But I'm hoping a story that I'm working on for next week will be, it may or may not change that. I don't know. I got a tip, so we'll see.
Ooh, I like that. So we should go, how shall we find out about what you're pursuing at Black Web 2.0? Yes, we can go to your site, but do you Twitter?
I do.
At what?
At Black Web 2.0, but everyone talks about Twitter now, and I guess I've been on Twitter for about 2 years, so I'm kind of Twittered out a little bit. It's definitely a powerful tool, but everyone talks about it in terms of, social media, and it's not the end-all, be-all. Yeah. You know what I mean? So, thank you. So I like to use friend feed a little bit more now, just because you can see everyone's activity across the social web. So, if I'm following you on friend feed, I can see what you're tweeting, but I can also see, when you update pictures on Facebook or when you add pictures to Flickr. So I definitely am on friend feed now, but I'm at A Benton there, and at Black Web 2.0 there as well. So.
Well, I'm actually going to go, you just clapped, and you had a question earlier, so I'm hoping you have a question now that you can lob at someone. And introduce yourself first.
My name is Henry McKembe with localpolitics.com, and my question is actually shifted a little bit since you guys started speaking. And my background is technology. I was a developer, and then I'm moving over to advocacy and trying to merge politics and technology. And my question to you guys is, it's a little bit a weird question. The previous panel before you was about diverging and then creating almost like a black kind of everything, like a black act blue or a black whatever you want to call it. And your guys' panel is more about how do we get more, I guess, black entrepreneur into the existing infrastructure. Why do you think that exists between the panel before you, who's trying to break and create a separate infrastructure, and you guys who are trying to integrate the black entrepreneurs into the current infrastructure? Why do you think there's that divergence in between the two panels?
Very interesting.
I'll actually answer that only because I can relate to the previous panel, because my site is Black Web 2.0. So I actually did kind of break away and do something similar to that. But I mean, we are definitely all about integration. So we've also interviewed, people who are not black, but who cater to that audience. So it's not necessarily about being black and you have to be black for us to cover you or anything like that. It's really more so about the information. And I think a lot of people who are involved in social media tend to have an open mind for the most part. So integration really isn't an issue. It's more so, about the information. And in terms of entrepreneurship, everyone here is saying integrate, because you don't have to be a black something. You can just be a good something. And that's really what we strive to do at Black Web 2.0. Even though I am Black Web 2.0, I still want to be a good technology blog, and that's primarily why we cover mainstream technology news too. So we may cover, since Twitter is hot, I'll reference that again. We may cover, a Twitter client. It may not be developed by a black person at all. One of my writers, Rasheen, he actually doesn't cover anything, in terms of it being black specific. He covers just general things that help people get things done. Hi, Shireen. Hi, Angela.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, throw out what you have, and then we'll move on to someone else on the panel.
I didn't know if the guys wanted to answer that question, though.
Well, they can feed it into whatever you have to say. We can integrate it.
So, based on your response, Angela, one of the key issues that I see between the panel before and this one is a difference in women versus men.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
at least have some
No,
estrogen here.
I was hoping someone would go there.
Okay, so there's a challenge there, and also as a technologist that was around during the 90s before the boom, I was the web designer and master of politicallyblack.com that was later sold. So some people may remember that.
Yes.
But it's gone, and I'm doing other things like Digital Sisters, trying to get more African Americans, and particularly women, let me just say that, involved in the tech space. But one of the things that's always a challenge for me as I go to the tech startups and talking to the VC funders is that as me, this woman walking up to talk about tech and my expertise that happens to be since '84, they still kind of, yeah, not you, we'll talk to somebody else. And so I think that when we talk about this in terms of the digital space is we also have a barrier that certain people are expected to be good at this and come up with that hot, bleeding tech thing. And if I come in the door saying I have a hot, bleeding tech thing, they go, yeah, maybe tomorrow. So I think there's some challenges that we're talking about in that regard, and Angela talks about that, I think, as you're trying to follow other tech startups that don't happen to be male or...
No, I'll answer that. So first I'll say, how is that different from anything else black people have ever had to face in the United States, right? First, and I'm not saying that to diminish what you're saying, but the second point is, the reason why I make that point first is whenever we overcover something, we realize it's not good enough for us to be just good enough, that we have to be better, right? And what I found, to be brutally honest, if I can be, we all people in here, is that a lot of black people will say that, but when you look at what they're bringing to the table, they haven't done the homework to make that happen. And let's be brutally honest, right? Because at the end of the day, you're right, those VCs are going to give us a harder look than they would someone else. But we have to kind of look in the mirror and say, okay, did we really bring our A game to the table, right? Did we really think about this as a business? Did we really think of a unique business model and think about how this is going to make money? And did we go to them with an idea, or did we take the time to build something before we went in there to show that it can prove? I mean, and a lot of people get frustrated when I say that, but I mean, I'm just being honest, right? I could lie to you and say, it's just because we're black, and it's not always just because we're black, right? We have to, but the other part is, we don't collaborate like they do. And let's be honest, we don't, because if you say you've been to startups, I've been to Facebook, right? I've been to Twitter. There's an aura of collaboration in those places that just don't exist in black companies. We too busy worried about what somebody said about me the other day, and who's talking about who, and to a certain degree, that's right. But what we have to do, and I think for all of us, even me, my time is almost over. We have to instill that kind of collaborative nature in youth, right? We need to create programs to show them that it's okay to come up with an idea, fail at it, and come up with another one, right? The difference is, at Stanford, for example, there's an iPhone development class. And at the end of it, you get to throw your idea in front of a VC, right? But at least, even if none of those ideas get picked, you already have in your mindset that that's a possibility, right? You talk to urban youth, they don't have the thought of them creating a company as a possibility. And I'm not saying it's easy, and I'm not saying I have the solution, but we have to make hard choices and start thinking differently to make those changes.
Can I just follow up?
We have two other people at the mic, so I'm going to have to, you can circle back.
Actually, I want to make a comment to her point, because during the time that James is talking about working at UBO, raising $40 million, I had a company similar to well, I guess we would be analogous to UBO, and I went out and I raised a pretty good chunk of money, about $10 million, some through angel investors, some through VC. So it's possible, and quite frankly, I can say that in the early days, me knowing the difference between HTML and DKNY was, it wasn't there. However, it's possible. It's very, very possible. And so, I was able to create a company, sell a company, and again, I go back to we're the most creative people in the world, and to this point now where my company is self-funded. I didn't need to go get venture capital, And there are enormous opportunities out there. And to Navarro's point, you have to build it. Because it's, a lot of people have an idea. I mean, I can't tell you how many people hit me like, whatever. But the bottom line is, if you build it, then you have this demonstrative piece of thing, this widget, and that widget has value. And so, I mean, you don't have to look any further than your cell phone for the opportunity, because someone knows someone. And with me, I didn't know, I mean, listen, my first business plan was about this big, because I didn't know what I was doing. But what I did is I put myself in the mix, I put myself in the mix. I literally went to Silicon Valley. I started going to VC mixers. I started meeting the people. I happened to luck out because I met this guy named Tim Draper, who was the guy who funded Hotmail. And he thought I was, reasonably intelligent. And he thought, okay, I'll give this guy a chance. But, I mean, that's after, like, Navarro, he spoke to a zillion people. My first time out the box, I spoke to, 2 gajillion people. So, it's really about, to Navarro's point of, like, there's a sparse audience here, good for us, bad for them, So, but it can be done. So the notion that you're a woman, that's nonsense, because let me tell you something, my very first company, my ex-wife and I got funding. So, that's...
Can I have
well,
one thing?
I do have to say that there's 2 other people at the mic, so whatever you have to say, you have to keep it incredibly tight.
I'm just going to say really quickly. I think you're right about that. I'm not discounting that point, but also let's just remember the Stanford guys who get to pitch VCs are in Stanford and Harvard. All I'm saying is they still have that community there, and so that's the building block that makes it possible for the next steps to happen. At Harvard, you don't get the same platform that they get an exposure to, and that's all I want to say.
I just want to add one thing. We keep talking about lack of black, and this is an interesting point. We keep talking about, hopefully she listens to it. Can I get your hug off? Hold on, let me tell you one thing. Okay. I know. One thing you should know is that there's a senior at Spelman. I live in Atlanta, Georgia. There's a senior at Spelman that just came up with an iPhone app. She's amazing. And you got to watch out for kids like my son, who's 14, who rewrites Wikipedia pages and probably reads Fast Company and Wire before I do. I mean, there's a lot of hope out there. So let's not, it's not doom and gloom. And that trip to Palo Alto, which I actually grew up in, I actually went to Palo Alto High School across the street from Stanford. It's an easy trip to make, and you can work the Valley. The Valley is workable. And they're looking for us there. So don't think that you're not welcome in the Valley. So.
And by the way, I have an iPhone app that I want to find someone to help me develop. So anyone who knows a good iPhone app developer, let me know. I'm absolutely serious. Okay, we need to talk. There we go.
I like that.
And
he was like,
yeah, exactly. Why don't you introduce yourself to us? Oh, you were first? Okay, I wasn't sure. You both appeared in my field of vision. That is very gentlemanly, and I appreciate that. So why don't you introduce yourself and give us your question?
Hi, I'm Aljanita Davis, and I'll be 60 next year. I don't understand anything that you guys are saying. What I'm at, my question is, I have a son who could probably follow the sentences that you guys have said, things like iPhone app, a Wikipedia rewriter, things like that. I don't have a clue, but I'm a retired banker, so I understand financing and small businesses and venture capital and all of that. What do I tell my son, who's 22 and he could understand what you're talking about, for him to develop the mindset that you have, that this is a business opportunity on which he should focus? If he has that, what you guys have with this technology thingy, because I have to call him to turn on the television, but if he has that in going on in his brain, I can't understand a lot of times when he's trying to explain things to me. How do I communicate to him that this is an entrepreneurial opportunity, that he should go to your magazine, book, your site, whatever, something 2.0.
Black Web 2.0.
At Black 120, Black Web dash 2.0.
I think you're underselling yourself.
What do I tell him? Because see, he'd understand that. Where do I tell him to go? I need to say, John, you need to go look at this, this, and this. And these people have been successful in doing this. They understand it. And he would probably be able to go and take a look at that, because your conversation reflects a mindset of the value of this type of knowledge and how to use that knowledge to go forward as entrepreneurs?
Well, let me just quickly, this is purely advertising, but in the good sense. The people who are here, you can find them a couple of places. One is the place right up on the screen, which is cbcf.decado.com. Decado. But it says, it looks like Decado. Sorry, you can pronounce it because you're the entrepreneur. Yeah, so that. Okay, well, you know what? We also, excuse me, why do I keep doing that? We also have the mobilizingthemasses.blogspot.com. I'm trying to see how we can
give you my card.
Yeah.
I've had the opportunity of featuring, we wrote about James, we wrote about Navarro, we wrote about Eric, we will be writing about Gary. So I can give you my cards. A lot of times I think the youth, they want to see people doing stuff. So, leading by example kind of. So if they see a Navarro, if they see a James, if they see an Eric, they might say, oh, I can do this too. So I think that might be the first step for him.
Can I address that though? I just want to share. So our second client was Jane Fonda. She's 72 years old. Had used Google one time in her life. I just want to share something with you. Grandparents have replaced high school students on Facebook as the fastest growing segment. And I would say to you that one interesting thing that you could do to sort of show him is by maybe signing up for Facebook and adding me as a friend, and you and I start having a conversation, and then you friend me and I friend him, and then we actually show him, because you're using the tools, you show him that we're connected. We met at this conference. I'll give you all of my information. And you actually take the lead in showing that. And the one thing I want to say about the older generation using technology, I think that's part of this conversation. I don't think it's enough to just say that, I don't really understand. I think right now you can get involved, and there are plenty of older people who are getting involved, and I'd love to connect with you on that subject.
All right, anyone else where to go? Please.
Yeah, just real quickly, just say, one of the problems is that, we've made it so easy, or the people who want to sell you this stuff have made it very easy to be a consumer without seeing the guts of what they do. And so it's just like going and seeing the meat without seeing the cow slaughtered. It's now so easy. The iPhone app has made it so easy to just buy, and you've already given your credit card a long time ago, and you never really see the transaction. You just kind of slide it over and it's done. And so you miss that sense of entrepreneurship sometimes. And so what you really have to do, I would think you would want your son to start loading up videos to YouTube, start seeing the participation, how you can create whatever's out there. The next thing that's going to happen with apps, by the way, is that Apple TV is about to have applications on the screen. So if you get Apple TV, you'll be able to, go on and buy apps on your big screen. And so what that really does is make anybody who can create an application, that kind of application, can now have their own TV network, essentially. So it's a really powerful tool for folks if you use it. And we really haven't used it. You go on YouTube and you see mostly, people doing crank dad videos, And so, you can go out and show your community, being, segregated or desegregated or whatever. There are ways to use that in an entrepreneurial way. But again, you just have to, I would say in every way, not just the web, start showing your child, how people are actually, the guts of how things are done. Take them to a slaughterhouse and show them the cow being cut up, and then showing up in the package later, and understanding that every little thing around. What I do with my kids, I show them everything. I take them around the house and show them. See this tablecloth? Somebody made it. See this table? Somebody made it. 10 people made this chair, and you black people were probably not in any of those things, right? And so that's just a training. That's a training. So it's not just about the web. It's just about entrepreneurship in general. Things are made, the doorknob turns right because somebody studied that it turns right. All of those things make sense, and it's just a different way of thinking about the world.
And if you want a left-turning doorknob and you don't find one, maybe you can make one.
Yep. I want to answer really quickly your point about that there's a mindset that we have up here that is unique. I don't think it's that unique, right? I think, how many of us have known somebody who you walk in their house and they always have free cable and you never know how they got it, right? I knew a guy who could take a piece of metal and shave it a certain way and use payphones for free. So that mindset has always existed in African Americans, right? The challenge is, hanger antennas, I could go on for days, right?
Video games for free.
Right, exactly. But the reality is that we need to direct it, right? I mean, what happens now is that, my panelist's point is that we've allowed ourselves to be pacified as consumers, and we stopped asking the question, well, how'd they do that? You know, I was in the barbershop the other day, and the barbers were in there playing Madden 2010, and they were talking about how realistic it did. Not once did anyone ask, well, how'd they do that? Right? You know, if your kids have video games, take them to Barnes & Noble or take them to the library and find a book on video game program and show them that they can do that. There's a program that's called, from Carnegie Mellon, that's called alice.org. That's a visual program you can download for free that teaches kids visually how to compute a program. I mean, there's so many things out there. And when you tell them where to look, like, I mean, he can look at me, that's great. But tell him to look at Google, to just type in the search term, how do you build an iPhone app? How do you make a video game? It's all free. That class I told you about at Stanford is offered as free videos on iTunes. So there's so much stuff that's out there free and readily available. We just have to have these conversations the same way we talk about what Nene said on Desperate House, on Atlanta Housewives last week. We just got to have those conversations. Yeah, you know.
I love it.
Well, my name is Kevin Clark. I'm a professor at George Mason University and the director of the Center for Digital Media Innovation and Diversity. And I actually worked as a part of a software startup where we developed educational video games for the Sony PlayStation. And one of the things that I'm excited about is that there aren't a lot of people in this room because I think it creates more discussion and we can have access to you. But I want to build on what you just said, Navarro, as well as what you mentioned, Eric. And that is finding out how to do it. I mean, I'm a professor, and I can write a grant till the cows come home. I can write a book or a journal article, but one of the things I'm trying to do now is get back into entrepreneurship, and I find that the model that worked in the early 90s, because I was part of that tech boom in Silicon Valley and that tech bust in Silicon Valley, is not working anymore. And so now I find myself trying to connect with people to do it in 2009. And so I'd really like to hear your comments about how to collaborate, how we can collaborate so that I'm not recreating the wheel all over again when you've done it and you've done it. And also, how do we identify mentors and people who can help us with those things and allow us to share skills so that I can get somebody to program her iPhone app and you can help me create a business, and how do we connect with one another?
And I'm very excited about this question because it's also what's very much on my mind, because I think one of the things that I would love to hear as you answer his question is how much, because I'm someone who's lived in the world of the internet, the web, social media, partly through trial and error and partly through knowledge and partly through partnership. And I think one of the things that fascinates me about entrepreneurs, which all of you are, is how much do you decide, I'm going to do this myself, because there's a learning curve here which may be steep, but I need to know what's going on. I need to know, it's like, for example, I don't know how to design a site per se, but I know enough so that I can instruct other people to design a site. How much do you do it by yourself? How much do you need to learn as you go? And how much do you need to partner? And then, of course, the big question right here is how do you find those partners?
Well, I can speak about how we do it. I mean, I have a staff of 27 people. And so, I've hired designers, software engineers, business development people. And what our goal is to create a solution that enables people like you to have your own platform, as opposed to using other people's platforms. It's great to use Twitter, but we're in first quarter of 2010, we're launching a Twitter-type application that affixes to our software. So imagine you had a group of people, and this group of people actually made you money. That has value. But this twittering about, I had cornflakes this morning, to me is ridiculous. Yeah. And so,
not if that makes you money, which it does for A+K.
What?
A+K married to Demi Moore. He can Twitter about anything.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
No, I'm serious though, because I won't get too deep into it, but all I'll say is that it's sometimes the personal tweets that make the other stuff go down. It's like the spoonful of sugar makes the medicine go down.
Oh, okay.
But please, go ahead.
Yeah, but I guess to the question of, you know, how do you find that? I mean, our sole goal is to create the platform. You're talking about iPhone apps. I mean, literally, there's about 40 kids that I have making an iPhone app for a faith-based vertical, and I have a bounty. I'm like, whoever comes up with the hottest app by, I think it's February 10th or whatever, I'm going to pay him $10,000, and I'm just going to buy the app from him. But you know, I put a bounty out there, and they're making it, and so I don't care if he's Chinese or Asian. I don't care who. I just want him to bring me the product, because that end product can be transferred to everyone here. I mean, I just happen to be in the software development category, but the end use is to provide a platform for Angela, for Navarro has his own platform, excuse me, for anybody who has has an interest in aggregating their users to make money. That's my bottom line. If you don't make any money, then my value to you is useless. And so that's really where we concentrate on, and even to the extent that I made a platform to aggregate the panelists for the Congressional Black Caucus. This thing here, it's built on my software, and this is an example.
Can you pull up the mic?
This is an example of how the platform works. I don't know how fast this internet connection is, but
Not very, but that's all right. Give it a try.
I just did. But essentially what this is, it's built off of on the Caddo backbone. And so there was earlier discussion from the congressman about, or about the congressman about connecting users, connecting activism. And if you have your own brand, no different than or BarackObama.com, and you use it and you can aggregate users, you can do two things. You can bring them together and you can make money. And I know that everybody's like, well, how do you make money in social media? Well, for us, all of our clients actually make money using this type of platform. So, and this is just not moving at all, so I can't even show.
He told me, unfortunately, the connection is.
Well,
why don't we, if it loads later, we'll definitely check it out.
Well, what the objective with this was for, at least was intended, was to show, we're on a social media panel, so let's show how social media works. What we were able to do was aggregate some of the people, the users. There are several populations here. There are panelists. We all have our profiles. There's Congressional Black Caucus members. There's media. There are journalists, and then down here sort of and each person has their own specific profile on their role, and we're able to communicate quickly with each other and to bring others inside of the network. So since it's not moving, I can't show social media.
Pull over your.
I would actually say, outside of just asking people if they will mentor you, you can go to sites like Elance if you know that you need, like, for instance, you need a site designed and you know more or less what you want. You can outsource that to individuals.
You can hire a person through Elance.
Right.
I think trust is always an issue there.
Trust is an issue, and direction is also an issue. But if you're building an application, it's definitely a cost-effective way to do it. And then at a bare minimum, you have your prototype at that point.
One thing that just popped into my mind as I'm scanning Twitter was that the Wii is apparently going down to $200 for the basic Wii, and by dropping the price of the console, you can then keep getting people involved in new games. And it strikes me that, was it Navarro who was talking about the $300 computer, or just the price of actually owning a computer is now very low. But what is the and I know this may sound a little abstract, but what's the price of the knowledge it takes to be an entrepreneur? What do you need to pay? Is it your time? Is it your, stepping outside of the market so that you can get educated, so you can step back in? I mean, what prices have you guys had to pay to know all the stuff that you know?
Well, I think, I'll answer that question with a question. What's the price do you pay to not become one? right? And I'll give you a scenario. Thank you. Wow.
Yeah,
So
it's true. Very true.
I worked at BET for 6 years. BET was bought by Viacom for $3 billion. Bob Johnson became the first black billionaire. I got my next check from BET 2 weeks after, which was the same check I got 2 weeks before, and the same check I got 2 weeks after that. So, I use it as an example of, the person who created the company benefited in the long run. The person who worked for the company received a paycheck and a stable living. Now, I think this most recent recession has proved to us that having a job at a company doesn't necessarily mean you're stable. I think all of us know, whether it's ourselves or someone close to us, who's lost what they thought was a fairly stable job. So at the end of the day, if you had to choose between it being your fault you lose your job or someone else's fault you lose your job, which one would you rather have? And I think, going back to the comment before, I have to respectfully disagree, right? I think the internet, the way it is now, is that you can build companies on top of things that already exist to serve a specific market, to serve a specific area, and you don't have to actually, to answer your question, know how to build an app, right? 5-step process. I want to build a website. There's a company called 99 Designs where I can create a competition for $200 and thousands of designers will create my webpage graphics and compete for that $200, right? You go to Elance, another couple $100, I can hire somebody to build my site, right? If you have the idea, you can cobble those pieces together, but at the end of the day, if you have no money, you have to do it yourself. But that's the challenges we face every day, right? There's no different in business. So it's really about, you ask the cost, it's about really sitting down and being resourceful enough about how do I get the tools I need to be successful, and the passion, and that's where the passion comes in. So the real cost is passion.
I love it.
I just want to say, for me, I spent, after UBO, I spent the last 6 years working inside agencies. Most recently, I was at Ketchum, where I was vice president of social media, and I was the most senior African-American in the entire joint. And I spent 2 years working with brands, large brands, Fortune 500 companies, to find out, how they were buying social media, how they were changing their infrastructure to ready for the social media change. And, I'm not a company guy, but, I did what I had to do to gain the knowledge, to earn a pretty decent living. But I started my company in the down part of the recession. I started my company 6 months ago, and we've actually now hired 6 people. We're growing faster than ever. We've won a bunch of new big clients. And I think the price I paid, I don't know, I think it's, I think that early 90s or late 90s run that we had gave me the confidence to do it again, to know that I could try it again, and that I figured out what went wrong, and that I really value relationships. And I think one of the things, again, I keep stressing is the ability to network. And I think through social media, you now have an opportunity to network. You talk about mentors. You now have an opportunity to network like never before. Whether it's, most recently I've become friends with this woman, Charlene Lee. She's written a book called Groundswell, which everybody should read about. It's about social media. And Charlene Lee and I only knew each other through Twitter and Facebook. And now Charlene has been an advisor to our company and helping us build a social media company. So I think the tools that are out there, it used to be LinkedIn, now it's Facebook, now it's Twitter, allow you to connect with people in a way that you've never done before. Like I said, I went to high school in Palo Alto. Many of my classmates are in the Valley and were VCs, and through Facebook, I've had the largest 20-year high school celebrations I've ever had, and many of which with people who are vital to our company today and are helping us, raise money and to bring in new clients. So I just can't stress the importance of relationships. I think I knew that. I valued that. I was always that kid. I was always that intern when I was interning in the music business. And I went inside, took a civilian job, and then, have now reemerged with a new confidence, a new passion, and new faith.
I want to go to the 2 folks we have out here. That's about all the time we're going to have to give you guys enough time for your questions. So I believe you were first. Correct me if I'm wrong. So introduce yourself and toss one at the crowd.
Thank you. My name is Tara Lynn Gray. My company is Yadari Enterprises. We are management consultants and provide technical services. I personally have been in information technology for over 20 years and have been an entrepreneur for 10
for the last 10 years. Our company has been doing quite a bit of work on H1N1 pandemic and preparing businesses for the age of pandemics, which we are in. Only 84% of businesses in the United States have any clue as to what they will do at a major pandemic issue. So I came today really to find out how to use social media for my corporate benefit to spread that message. But while here, a lot of things have come up, and great to find out about your platform. I'll be looking at that later. But what I wanted to know is I'm always curious about the human issue. And wherever humans are involved and there's communication, there's room for error, there is room for not so nice things to be said, et cetera, et cetera. And so I'm wondering what your experiences have been in the social media arena with reputations being harmed, with incorrect information. How do you police what's out there? How do you deal with it from a corporate policy perspective inside of your own organizations? And that's probably, I could go on, but that's probably enough to start the discussion.
Ooh, I like that. Well, I'll give, my 2 cents, which is that I learned fairly early in my career, and this isn't about social media per se, but it's about the fundamental human nature that leads to social media being sticky. You don't have to act on gossip, but you do have to know it. And if anyone is, I forget the Shakespeare line, but it's a line that basically says, someone who robs me of my good name enriches not himself, but robs me of something important. And so people, there are people who will besmirch what you're doing, but I think the first step often, and this is, something that comes to mind with social media, is that you have to evaluate whether something that upsets you is actually false. Like if someone says their company didn't deliver on such and so, you have to be willing to really examine a statement. If it's false, you act one way. If it's true, you have to act another way.
I'll take that because I've been recently involved in something that involved that subject, and glad that Angela's on this panel because she'll be able to tether this conversation. But in February, while I was executive at Ketchum, I sent a tweet about a racist incident in Memphis, Tennessee, while visiting a client, FedEx. That tweet went around the world within 20 minutes. And 5 minutes? Okay, 18 minutes, let's call it. And that tweet became very famous because I sent this tweet to talk about a situation that I encountered the night before that bothered me. Within 5 minutes, as my friend in the back says, it was read, 20,000 times. It was insane. I later flew that night from Memphis to New York to meet with another FedEx executive. And we were in the middle of a media storm. My company was, stymied by the situation. As a PR company, they were thinking about issuing a press release, which we know in this day, who's going to issue a press release? So I did what was natural, which I thought was to write a blog post. And my blog post was going to talk about racism and what had happened to me. It was the weekend before inauguration. I was really frustrated and felt that what was happening to me in Memphis was ridiculous, and I wanted to voice it. I decided to not, under guidance by my company, and I decided to change the direction and the tone of that blog post. I think that I'm a better counselor because of that situation, but I use that scenario to talk about the fact that real things happen. We have these tools at our hands. It's sometimes taken out of context. But what I learned during that experience, I got flamed a lot. I got near racist, hate, death, emails from other people, PR people. I mean, it was a mixture of a lot of really ill feelings. In fact, this weekend on CNN, I actually spoke about civility and social media on Don Lemon's show. So it's interesting that we're having this conversation. And you can find it on my blog. We just posted it. But there are a lot of I think that this subject for many in this room is actually an opportunity for entrepreneurs in the room, is corporate social policy, how to manage conversations. When we talk about all these tools at our hands, how do we help shape what someone's saying? I stand behind what I said, and I stand behind the tweet that I tweeted, just so you know. I have no problems with what I said that day because I was dealing with a human issue, just like if there was a woman who had been assaulted, she would tweet about, sexual assault, or if it was a Jewish person and felt like they didn't get, something, they would tweet about that. I was almost being denied a hotel room, so I felt like I wanted to talk about that. Yeah, it's okay. But it's all, here's the wonderful thing about the internet. It's all there. Google me. James Andrews, FedEx, it's all there. But my point for this story is not to get into the nitty gritty of the details of what happened. The point for this is to tell you that when we talk about social media, that real things are out there. And there's a real opportunity for us to both think about what we're saying, to use the right forum, and to create activism behind what we're saying. Now, I'll tell you this, none of the mainstream bloggers, in fact, most of them, like the, what are these people, Gawker's the one that picked it up, Gawker.com, and all the other PR blogs, they bashed me, they were going after me. There's one blog that I called to support, and that's Angela right down on the table. I was on the plane, like, Angela, check it out. This is what's going on. And Angela completely supported me, along with Lynn Johnson at Fast Company and some others. And so, Wayne Sutton, who's another person. I mean, really, we galvanized, and I called all of the African-American people, because the way the story was being portrayed, you didn't even know I was African-American. It just looked like some arrogant, person who went to the South who didn't like sweet tea, who decided to tweet. And I have a problem with those people that come to Atlanta and do that. So I decided to use that forum. But my point is that that's an opportunity. It's a lesson learned. But even as an entrepreneur, corporate crisis communications is just like you're looking at pandemics. I'm looking at that as an opportunity for a business, and someone in here maybe is taking this. That's an opportunity for an upstart PR firm or communications company to help organizations manage all of the communications that are happening by your employees, by your CEO, who may send a drunk tweet from a bar. It's just tons of things. That was happening to me, but that could have been anybody. And tomorrow it'll be Shaq, it'll be Ocho Cinco, it'll be somebody. And that's why the NBA and the NFL are freaking out. So this is a very serious topic, and one that I think is an opportunity for an entrepreneur.
Another way to think about that is that it used to be a time when one letter to a TV station or a network used to shut down a TV show, because the idea was that one person may have written a letter, but that represented a million people who didn't take the time to write the letter and to do the work to do it. Now, 5 people may write in an email, and it may only be 5 people. And they may have realized that, wait a minute, we extrapolated that it was like, millions of people because of this. But now that everybody has the ability to reach out, if it's only 5 people, then, it may not be worth dealing with in that same sense. So you may not have to cancel the show because only 5 people thought it was offensive because it was just 5, So that just kind of changes the dynamic of how companies begin to respond to that. Though 9 times out of 10 when somebody says something negative about a company, generally somewhere it's true. So that's another thing to remember. So
to help you out, I did a quick Google search on the type of people who write negative search, and the technical term is called haters. That's what they mean. But what people need to understand is, the beauty about social media is that we're all connected and we feel like we're on a level playing field. The negative about social media is that we're all connected and we feel like we're on a level playing field. So the stuff we experience now as individuals, the stuff that celebrities have experienced for years, and they're experiencing even more because people feel like, if I can get on the internet, I can say what I want about you, whether it's derogatory, hurtful, untrue, etc. I mean, there's gossip sites, specifically in the African American space, who make their living off of being as negative about other people as humanly possible. And what we need to never forget about technology is that there's a human side to it, and then that's the challenge. When you have 1 million followers, you forget that there's 1 million people there, and then you affect 1 million people when you say things. So, and no one's got the secret sauce for that, but, you bring up a good point.
Luckily we have
I'm going to go to the gentleman with the last question. Can you introduce yourself? Fantastic.
She wanted to.
Okay. Well, can you guys put it back to back, because we are literally 7 minutes away from shutting this puppy down. So you're going to have to if you want to both do it, you're going to have to put your questions back to back, and we'll have to wrap it up, because I don't know if they'll come kick us out of the room, which they sometimes do.
Thank you. Hi, I'm at the Pan-African Film Festival, and we have, we're like a big black film festival, right, all over the world.
A wonderful film.
And we have the cow, but we don't have the packing house. We have gone to I don't know how many people to deal with the web and social networking, and nobody has been able to interpret that vision. We've never been able to find any company or entity that can do what we want to do. Is there like a network of you guys, or some kind of place where you can go and find I'm with the sister over there that, I don't know any of that technical stuff, but, I do have vision. Is there some place where we can go and find you?
Right here at this table.
Well, yeah, but I know it now. But is there
that was an
somewhere?
invitation? I would not pass that up.
I'm not
because
going
you may not be in the same room.
There's not many of us's. Like in terms of high strategy, been in the game for a while. You're pretty much, it's a small pool of people. So if this man says come see him,
you
have a great.
But aside from that, now I'm here. But there's a lot of other people that didn't come that are in the same situation.
I got a lot of cards. I brought a lot of cards.
Yeah, and I think that you can be a replicator and pass the information. Go to that site. Go to Mobilizing the Masses.
Yeah,
I'll repeat that in a second, but I really do need to put these questions back to back.
Okay, well, just to address her question while you're coming out, I started a site, I guess, a couple of days ago, and it's very, very alpha and very, very rough right now, but it's called Color in Tech. Color in Tech, and it has Navarro on there, and it has James on there, and it's about 150 other people involved in various forms of social media and technology there that you can kind of reach out to. So.
Well, thank you all for participating on the panel. Y'all have done very well and been very inspired by your comments. One thing is, I wanted to say North Carolina A&T has a great deal of graduates who are becoming involved in technology. Georgia Tech has a great deal of black folk that are being involved, becoming involved in technology, and I hope that you all can reach out to those communities and maybe start up an iPhone app class or speak with them. My brother graduated from there. He started up his own organization after being in the corporate world. He started up his own company, and he's down in Atlanta working amongst his network, and it's the A&T network of tech graduates that he's working with, and he's come back to Baltimore and speaks to young people there about their getting involved in technology, and he's just a small business owner that knows his market, and isn't reaching for 1 million people necessarily as much as he would like to. I do want to know how involved. I'm more of a legal person. I'm in law school right now for communications law, and I want to know how involved you all are in terms of some of the legal issues that you all have to have come up against, and how can you. What do you think that the legislators and policy analysts can do to help in the near future with the broadband expansion that they're doing right now over at the FCC? How engaged will you all be, and how can we help you to increase your business and so that our future can look a little bit brighter? I'll put it that way.
A couple of things. There are a million legal issues. Obviously, bigger companies have more problems than smaller. The wonderful thing about the web right now is that people who are just starting out, you're not making enough money to sue, because a lot of the stuff that you're doing, in theory, is illegal, right? So, the pulling the 10 and 20 pictures, on your website and stuff, you can do that. I can't do that on ebonyjet.com. We have to pay for that, to the tune of maybe $1,000 a day in photos alone, right, for a site, where other people can just kind of pull it. And so you have an opportunity to explore and build a market without some of those legal restrictions. It's a huge hurdle once you kind of jump over a certain market and start to reach a certain audience, because then it becomes a different game. There's also the amount of, the idea of usage. One of the big hurdles we have is all of that 67 years of content. A lot of that stuff were photographs where people did not sign releases, or things that celebrities don't want their image used in electronic form. So it's just a massive undertaking just to clear stuff legally to be able to move that. So it's not just about shrinking stuff so you can use it digitally and jumping out there in a way. Why don't you put all your archives on it? Massive undertaking to make that stuff legally sound before you can kind of put it out there. So those are just some of the issues. Legislatively, I think what happens with broadband is going to be hugely important. The fact that now the TV is digital and it's opened up all of that spectrum, what happens to that spectrum is something that we should really be watching. We're talking about online and we're talking about content production, but a lot of the money that's being made in digital, if you start breaking it up into how it's being made, content is the least profitable center of money. It's still hugely profitable, but it's the least.